So the NBA season is a little over a month away. It's kind of in that dead point where not a whole lot's happening. So we're getting some trade rumors sprinkled in here and there. And the Atlanta Hawks have kind of popped up once again. And it's all about Trae Young and how apparently his trade value is just not all that good right now.
Yeah, it kind of hurts me. I was a huge Trae guy. Just loved him coming out of college. And I always thought he was a great player, you know, had some flair to him a bit. So it does hurt to see. But at the same time, you look at the contract, the dude is awful on defense. Part of it sadly makes a little sense.
Before we start talking about Trae Young, if you haven't already, make sure to leave this video a like, give us a subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on one of our videos. Now, this whole video was basically just inspired by a single quote from ESPN's Tim McMahon where he said, quote, "The simple fact of the matter is if there was a real market for Trae Young, he'd be somewhere else right now." This was just taken from a podcast, and it's just one reporter's thoughts on the situation, so, you know, take it with a pinch of salt, but it's also a sentiment that we've heard pretty consistently over the past year that Trae Young's trade value just isn't very high. When you look at least on paper, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I mean, the dude's 25 years old. Arguably, he hasn't even entered his prime yet. Career averages of 25.5 points a game, 9.5 assists. He just made the All-Star game the past season for the third time in his career. He was 15th in scoring per game and only second in assist, and he's one of the better offensive players in the league. And on top of that, he's probably the best lob thrower since Chris Paul. I mean, there's not many guys in NBA history that are better lob throwers, so you'd think on paper, this is a must-get guy, and really, if you had him, he'd be untradeable.
And yeah, 3 years ago, I mean, it was unthinkable that the Hawks would even consider trading him. I mean, he had just led them to the Eastern Conference Finals. He had become the ultimate villain of New York. He had knocked off the top-seeded 76ers, and he only fell short against the eventual champs. But ever since then, the Hawks have just been unable to come even close to replicating that success. 22, he was terrible in the playoffs. He had more turnovers than he did field goals. And then right before the 2023 play-in game against Miami, like literally hours before the play-in game, that report from the Ringer dropped basically saying like the Hawks are open to trading everybody on the team, including Trae Young, which why on earth is that report coming out hours before the play-in game? The fact that it came out at all is bad enough. The timing it makes no sense at all.
And they somehow still gave Miami the business right after that. Yeah, that was crazy. And first, before we get into Trae himself, let's start out and talk kind of about the things that are outside his control, and that's the Hawks situation at the moment. I guess that's partly his control, but not entirely. First of all, they have no incentive to tank because they made that brilliant trade to get DeJounte Murray from the Spurs, and like we were talking about this trade before we started recording, I was like, well, there's got to be protections on those picks.
And I looked it up.
Top 3, top 1 at least.
Nothing.
No. What are you doing?
I have been saying over and over that one of these massive superstar trades where the team sends out like 3 or 4 first-round picks is gonna backfire tremendously. Maybe this is the one that makes everyone in the league reconsider these trades.
I mean, it's not even a superstar trade though, or even all-star trade. It's DeJounte Murray, which no hate, I like his game. Dude's not worth that. Come on now, Atlanta.
Not at all. And like, yeah, conventional wisdom would say, okay, you tried it with Trae and DeJounte. It didn't work, but you luck into the number 1 pick. So trade everyone a value, tank, and try to build around this kid. But they can't do that because they don't own any of their first-round picks. And it's one of the main reasons why the Spurs have been repeatedly floated as a suitor for Trae, not just because of the roster fit, which we'll circle back to at the very end, but also because the Hawks could actually get back some of their picks from San Antonio. And if the Hawks wanted to trade Trae anywhere else in the NBA, like this is the other thing, like maybe they are just saying, hey, we want a king's ransom for him because they are going to be in the same situation that the Nets were just in, where they had Mikal Bridges and everyone was like, oh, we'll give you all these picks for him. And the Nets were like, okay, that'd be good, but we don't have our own picks. So we're going to suck and we're not going to be able to benefit from being at the bottom of the standings.
And the thing that's so just honestly sad about it for the Hawks, like let's say they trade him to the Lakers or the Heat, like not a team where it's going to be the last pick in the draft, but but those are still playoff teams. With Trae, they're even better. Like, you're probably talking about what, like the 23rd pick, 22nd pick, maybe the 20th pick? And the Hawks themselves are going to be ass without Trae. They're going to land in like whatever the 3rd pick, 4th pick, and it's going to go to the Spurs. Like, that's just such a pathetic situation to be in, where you're one of the worst teams in the league and your draft pick still is not going to be in the lottery.
Ask the Brooklyn Nets how that feels.
Exactly.
It's not fun. I mean, unless they can flip him to the Wizards, I don't even think the Wizards are that stupid though. And the second thing is his contract. Look, Trae is making $43 million for this upcoming season. He'll make $46 million for the season after that, and he'll have a player option for the 26-27 season where he's going to make $48 million, which in all likelihood he'd decline and ask for a new contract. Like we mentioned earlier, he's a really good player, but I don't think there's going to be an appetite from any team in the NBA to give Trey Young a 5-year, probably $300+ million contract.
I mean, especially with the second apron coming in, like, unless you're a super young team, everyone's on rookie deals, like, how do you possibly build a championship contender bringing in that contract? Like, you're probably only able to have like another max guy, and then like, is Trey Young and another max guy a championship contender? Maybe, but really, yeah, it would only be a young team like the Spurs or a younger team coming up that could even make this move and have it make financial sense. And the next thing we got to talk about is Trae himself, the most divisive player in the NBA right now. Like, he was for a moment, in my opinion, the most overrated player in the league, or at least up there. Like, people were saying top 10 player, and now I think he might be the most underrated player in the league.
I was going to say, I think we're going to disagree on this because I still think he's kind of overrated.
He never gets talked about. His offensive game is insane. If you put just a solid defense around him, I think that's a playoff team basically every year, especially out east. I think he's underrated. The dude never gets talked about. Even in like top 25 conversations now, he's getting forgot about. Offensively, I know his defense still sucks. He's a little bit better on that end now, but offensively, the dude can ball.
Oh yeah, offensively, he's one of the best in the NBA. I mean, his scoring, shooting, passing, all of them like tip top of the NBA. But like you said, on his best day, he's like a neutral to below average defender at his absolute best. And the thing that gets me the most is he is a turnover machine. He just led the NBA in turnovers per game for the 2nd straight year. It's the 3rd time in his career he's done it. And in his 6 years in the NBA, he's never finished lower than 4th in the NBA in turnovers per game. As great as he is on offense, when you're that bad on defense and you turn the ball over that much, like, it offsets a lot of the value you bring to the offensive side of the court. So with all that considered, his value as a player and the unique circumstances the Hawks find themselves in, like, the thing that I found myself thinking about, and I really couldn't come up with a great answer, is like, what team in the NBA could and would trade for Trae Young? Because I think with the way the NBA is going right now, where it's, you know, deep teams, it's defense, I think like half the league would just be like, you know what, we don't need him.
Yeah, you want dudes who are switchable, that can play multiple positions. I mean, that was basically the Boston Celtics starting lineup. Like, swap dudes out at basically any position. Drew Holiday can play 1 through 3. Tatum can basically play like 2 through 4. So that's what you want in the modern NBA. Trae is not that. So I think you're looking at teams that are a little bit desperate. We mentioned them earlier. The Lakers, they're always going to be in conversation. You know, as long as LeBron's there, they want to add that one more star. They don't like D'Lo. I think D'Lo's time there, it's limited. Like, this season might be his last there, so you bring in Trae as a replacement. Like, I could see that. The Heat, they're a good defensive team, so you add Trae as an offensive guy. But that's about it among like the contending teams. I can't really think of anyone else. And the team, you know, everyone brings up when we circle back to, because they have the Hawks pick, is San Antonio. And I love the fit, but I don't know if San Antonio even wants Trae. Like,
I mean, the fit is as good, I think, as you can get when it comes to Trey Young, because the Spurs have Wemby, who in the next couple of years is going to be a top 4 or 5, maybe even a top like 2-3 player in the NBA. He would benefit a ton from Trey's ability to pass the ball, whether it's lobs, whether it's finding him for open shots. A pick and roll between those two would, it'd be phenomenal. It'd be great stuff. And Wemby, he's such a unicorn that on the defensive end, he could cover for Trae about as well as anyone possibly could. So from a fit perspective, it's phenomenal. And also, like you mentioned, the Spurs are in that unique scenario where they could go to the Hawks and say, hey, we'll give you one of your first round picks back and we'll amend the protections on another one, because they're not getting all 3 back. Trae's not worth that.
This deal is getting worse all the time.
But they could go and they'd be like, hey, we'll give you one back, we'll amend protections on the other, and then the Hawks could get some of their pick value back, right? But like you mentioned, the Spurs, what's more valuable to them at this point? Because Trae, you know, he's proven, everyone knows what he is. He's an offensive superstar, but he's probably a defensive liability, and he's basically a coin flip to lead the league in turnovers. Spurs. Do you want that, or are you more enticed by the potential of those draft picks? Because if there's one thing we know about sports teams, the only thing that is more enticing to them than production is potential.
I mean, I want to see it happen because of the lobs, but if I'm San Antonio right now, I'm like, nah, I'm saving these draft picks. I can either trade them for a different star that I think would fit better.
That's the other thing. It's like, what if someone who's significantly better than Trae Young comes available in a couple years?
Or if you just keep them, like that's more young players coming in. Also, you're not going to be as good, so you can tank for a couple more years, although with the way Wemby's playing, maybe you won't. You'll be a playoff team here soon. So I'd rather do that. And the last thing I got to touch on, like if the Atlanta Hawks do this business-wise, like think about that. You trade all these picks out to get DeJounte Murray, then you ship him off to the Pelicans, and you trade away Trae, not even getting your full return back to the Spurs. Like that would be all-time horrific business.
That's some
like
draft day shit right there.
Yeah, I don't even know if you're the Hawks front office, if you can even stomach making that move.
I mean, look, I get NBA GMs are prideful, and I'm always one. It's like you got to put like your emotions aside, and you got to do, as Triple H would say,
it's what's best for business, isn't it?
But I think I agree with you. I don't know if I could do this either.
Do that.
That's the video, guys. What do you think of Trae Young's? That's the video, guys. What do you think of Trae Young's trade value? I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving it a like, as it really does help us out. And while you're here, why not check out some of our other videos as well? And don't forget to subscribe to Synthetic Sports.